The next chapter is the chapter on Zakatul Fitr, which we just passed the time of Zakatul Fitr. Ramadan just ended a few days ago. Why is Zakatul Fitr here? We already said. This booklet of ours here is about contracts and dealings. But it's about money more broadly, and the obligations and prohibitions pertaining to money. So for that reason, we have put here and there, sprinkled here and there, issues pertaining to zakah. And likewise, here and there we sprinkled issues pertaining to marriage, because marriage is a type of contract. So we're talking about contracts and deals. So, okay, so the next chapter is Zakatul Fitr. But someone might ask, why put it here? Because, why would someone ask that? I say this question should be there. Why is there? Okay, why it's in the book? It's in the book because it's related to money. Why is it here at this point here? And the reason why this question, the second question, is relevant is because of the attempt to arrange the deals, because of the attempt to arrange the deals in this booklet in a way that you see a progression. You can see how one deal leads up to the next deal, how one chapter leads up to the next chapter. When I first studied dealings, in the text of Abu Shuja', in particular, my first exposure to more details of dealings, I was surprised to find what looks like to me, in a lot of cases, randomness in the chapters, in the types of deals. There would be a type of deal. Then the next chapter is another type of deal, but I'm like, those so far apart. Why is it listed this way? Seems like he's just putting them. Okay, here's a deal. Here's another type. Here's another type. Hey. So there's an attempt here to arrange the dealings in a way that there's a succession, something that enables your mind to leap into the next chapter, then into the next chapter. So then what were we saying right before this chapter we didn't start reading yet of Zakatul Fitr? The chapter right before that was about spousal support. So we talked about how a man has to support his wife. And that's here also because of the money that's involved in doing so. So after we talked about spousal support, then there's a chapter which is one of the zakat chapters, the zakat chapter called Zakatul Fitr. And so the author says, supporting Muslim bodies is the zakat of bodies, Zakatul Abdan. Supporting Muslim bodies, is the reason for having to pay zakat of bodies. So, firstly, what are your types of zakah? You have two main branches of zakah. You have zakatul mal, that's money zakat. You have zakatul abdan, that's body zakat. Zakatul mal, the money zakat, that's the zakat you're going to pay because of having money. Zakatul abdan, that's the zakat you have to pay because of supporting Muslims. Obligatory support of Muslims. Notice here also, I said to you, this is the zakat that you have to pay because of. So zakatul mal is the zakat that you have to pay because you have money. I didn't say what you have to pay though. I said why you have to pay it, not what you have to pay. Zakatul mal is the zakat that you have to pay because you have money. But what do you have to pay? That's another thing. I'm not talking about it. And zakatul abdan is the zakat you have to pay because you support, because you're obligated to support Muslim bodies. What do you have to pay? We'll talk about it inshallah. But remember first, before we talk about it, going back to zakatul mal, money zakat, this one breaks into two categories: zakatul ayn and zakatul qima. Zakatul ayn means the zakat that you have to, what you have to pay is the exact money. Meaning, you know what money means. So that means you're going to have to pay raisins. That's the money. The raisins is the money. Or you're going to have to pay wheat. Or you're going to have to pay cows. Or you're going to have to pay sheep. That's the money. Or you're going to have to pay gold, etc. So that's zakatul mal. That's zakatul ayn under zakatul mal. Zakatul ayn means the zakat, you have to pay the money itself. You have money, because you have money, you have to pay zakah with all the other conditions too. And what do you have to pay? You have to pay the money that you have. With a detail when it comes to camels, we're not going to talk about it now. Sometimes when you have camels, you're going to pay sheep. So when you have camels, you're going to pay camels. When you have cows, you're going to pay cows. When you have sheep, you're going to pay sheep. If you have gold, you're going to pay gold. If you have rice, you're going to pay rice, etc. If you have raisins, you're going to pay raisins. If you have dates, you're going to pay dates. If you have camels, sometimes you're going to pay sheep. Okay. The other type of zakatul mal, the other type of money zakat is zakatul qima. That's the zakah of value. This is for the trader. And you know what trading means. Trading means to buy something with the intention of selling it for a profit. And then with the profit, to buy more product to sell it for a profit. And so on. The cycle continues. If you do that for an entire year, you're not going to pay zakat on your merchandise. You're not going to pay your merchandise as zakat. Whatever your merchandise is, what do you sell? Maybe you sell hats or socks or all sorts of things. That's not what you're going to pay as zakat. That's Shafi'i school. Rather, you're going to price this inventory you have at the end of the year and add to that number whatever cash you've generated from your trade, not outside of your trade, just from the trade itself. That trade started with that initial purchase. You had some money. This money it's not yet counted yet. With this money, you buy something with the intention to sell it for a profit. Now, this what you bought with an intention to sell it for a profit, this is where you're going to start your value. Then you start generating money from here. So at the end of your lunar year, you're going to price your inventory wholesale, add to that price any cash that you've generated from your trade. What's the value of all of this? If it's a value that would be something that makes you have to pay the zakat of gold or silver, had it been gold or silver, had that value been gold or silver, would you pay the zakat of gold or silver? If yes, then you need to pay the zakat of gold or silver. So I'm summarizing greatly here, just to remind you and review with you quickly. The zakat of the trader is the zakat of gold or silver. The zakat of the trader is a zakat based on value, not the money itself. So you have money, which is your merchandise, and what you're going to pay is gold or silver. Okay, so there's two types of zakat: zakatul mal, money zakat, which has two categories, and zakatul abdan, body zakat. And body zakat is what we want to talk about today. You're going to pay body zakat for being obligated to support Muslim bodies. Who are the Muslim bodies you're obligated to support? To remind you also, this is from the Book of Obligatory Knowledge. Knowing which Muslim bodies you're obligated to support, you learned that in the Book of Obligatory Knowledge. So, you're obligated to support your wife, who makes herself available to you. If she runs away from you or turns you down, you're not obligated to support her until she repents. When she repents, then you'll be obligated again. If she's Muslim bodies. Not if you have a kafir wife. Your prepubescent children. Your prepubescent children who don't have their own money, you're obligated to support them. If they have their own money, then you're allowed to spend their money on them and keep your own. If they don't have their own money, then you're obligated to support them. So those are more Muslim bodies you're obligated to support. Your poor Muslim parents. You're obligated to support your poor Muslim parents, and that's an obligation shared between all siblings. It's not on one sibling in particular. All siblings are obligated to support their poor Muslim parents. Yani, they share the responsibility. Also, your pubescent Muslim children, if they cannot work, and cannot work here means they're crippled. They might be insane. Then you have to support this Muslim child of yours who's insane because he can't work. Or maybe can't walk, for example. It's crippled. So needs someone else help. Has to be pushed in a chair, for example, and helped from the chair to the bed, etc. Can't work. Then even if this person is pubescent, you're obligated, you Muslim man, father, you're obligated to support this this pubescent Muslim child of yours if they don't have their own money. And your Muslim slaves, you're obligated to support them. What if you had poor brother, poor sister, or aunt, or uncle, or cousin? You're not obligated to support them. And when we say here you're not obligated to support them, that doesn't mean you're allowed to neglect them. Saying you're not obligated to support them doesn't mean you're allowed to neglect them. But there's a difference between helping someone out and supporting him. Because when we say support, that means you're going to put him in your house or a house and give him clothes and feed him. You're going to keep him fed. The one you're supporting, you're keeping that one fed and clothed and housed. But if you had a brother or sister or aunt or uncle or cousin, you're not obligated to support this one with this meaning. But you might be obligated to help this one if helping that one would be a case of keeping the ties with the relatives, keeping the ties with the Muslim relatives. Sometimes you have a Muslim relative who's poor. And if you don't do anything for this Muslim relative, and you don't even speak to them, you don't even reach out to them, you neither reach out to them and you don't even give them a handout, then it will be included under breaking the ties of the Muslim relatives, with the kinfolk. So the author says supporting Muslim bodies is the zakat of bodies, yani is the reason for being obligated to pay the zakat of bodies, zakat al-abdan. If one has an excess of money for the day of Eid and its following night, the day of Eid here means the daytime, the daytime of Eid, and the night that comes after it. Although, as you know, religiously, the night comes before the day. The true night of Eid is when the sun goes down on the last day of Ramadan. Maghrib comes in and Ramadan's over. That night is Eid night, really. And then the next day is Eid day. And then the night after that is not Eid night, really. Because the night comes before the day. The night is the start of the 24-hour cycle. But for this religious judgment, the case is that you need to consider having an excess of money for the daytime of the Eid and the night that comes after that. What's an excess of money? What does that mean? That means having more than what one needs for himself and his dependents. Yani, he has enough for himself, he has enough for his dependents, and his dependents include his animals too. So you do have to support your animals, but you don't have to pay zakat for them. Those are not counted as Muslim bodies, the animals that you have to support. So you have enough for yourself and for your dependents, and that includes your animals. Those are your dependents too. After lodging and clothing, so you got the clothes you need, you got the lodging you need on that day and the following night. And even a needed servant, you have the servant you need, because you might need a servant. That might be your case. Servant like a maid or a slave or butler, it might be the case that you need one. Doesn't mean you're snooty, doesn't mean you're rich, wealthy. Could be a poor person who needs a slave. It's possible. So even a needed servant, slave or servant, it doesn't have to be a slave only, a servant. But you could be a poor person who has a slave and you cannot do without this slave. So that's going to be counted as money that you need. Because what you need is not excess. The excess is what you don't need. So just because one has a servant or has a slave doesn't mean that he has extra. That doesn't mean he has extra. Just because you have a car, that doesn't mean you have extra, even if it's a fancy car. And sweets for the Eid, the sweets for the Eid is counted as not part of your extra money. So you want to observe that sweets for the Eid. If you're a healthy person, then you can make some allowance for the holiday. Inshallah ta'ala. And Nawawi and Ar-Rafi'i log about Imam al-Haramain that debt prevents the obligation of Zakat al-Fitr. Yani, your debts also is, if you have debts, then you're not obligated to pay Zakat al-Fitr. Just as needing to support one's relatives prevents it, with apostrophe S, one's relative prevents it. Yani, we're saying you're going to have to pay this zakat for supporting Muslim bodies when you have excess of money. So what's not counted as your excess? Your lodging itself, that's not extra. Even if you have a big house, that's not extra. Your clothing that you need, that's not extra. We talk about what you need. And your servant that you need, and the sweets for the Eid, count that as something you need. And your money to pay your debts, even if they're not due yet, you need that, so that's not extra. That's just like the money you need to support your relatives in the first place. If the money you have, you need it to support your relatives, and then you don't have extra, then you don't have an excess. So after considering all of this, if you have extra money after all of that, then you're going to have to pay zakat al-fitr. One pays for himself. That's where you start. Male or female, pubescent, of course. One pays for himself. Now, zakat is obligatory on the child's money. Prepubescent child's money, zakat is obligatory on prepubescent child's money in the Shafi'i school. Not in other schools. In some schools, doesn't pertain to the child's money. In Shafi'i school, does pertain to the child's money because it's money. He looked at it from the perspective of the money, not the child. So he said the money of the child is included. Other scholars, they looked at it from the perspective of the child. Said the child's not obligated, so his money's not included. We're learning Shafi'i school. One pays for himself. We're starting here. That's going to be a man or a woman. Let's say unmarried man, bachelor and bachelorette. Two nice young Muslims, good Muslims. This man has some money. This young lady, she has some money. Each one has to pay the zakat for their own body. So one pays zakat for himself or herself. And for any Muslim he must support. So now, and for any Muslim he must support, whether because of ownership, marriage, or relation, yani blood relation, kinship. So what if this young man and this young woman got married? Then now she does not have to pay this zakat. Her husband is the one who's obligated to support her. So he pays the zakat for her body. He pays for his own body and for his wife's body now. And she doesn't have to pay the zakat of fitr. She doesn't. Not just she doesn't have to. She doesn't. It's not obligatory on her in here. It's not her zakat anymore because she's married. So now this man, he's going to have to pay in this scenario double. At first, he only had to pay for himself. And she only had to pay for herself. When they got married, then now he has to pay double and she doesn't have to pay anything. Why would someone be obligated to support another? We have three reasons here. Because of ownership, marriage, or relation. So ownership means slaves. So if you have Muslim slaves, then for each body you're obligated to support, you have another zakat on you. So this man, he married this woman, and then he went and bought a slave. So a Muslim slave. So now he has to pay triple. One for him, one for her, one for his Muslim slave. Because of ownership, marriage, or relation. Then she gave him a beautiful baby. And that's a Muslim baby. And this baby doesn't have his own money. So he has to now pay quadruple. One for him, one for her, one for his slave, one for his baby. And if you had to support his poor Muslim parents, both of them, let's say, were poor. Now I don't know how you say six times. One for him, one for his wife, one for his baby, one for his slave, one for his mom, one for his dad. One may pay on behalf of his small rich child. Pay on behalf of his small rich child. So he has a prepubescent child. He has a prepubescent child who has his own money. In the Shafi'i school, the zakat is taken from the child's money. If the father wanted, he can just pay on behalf of his child. He doesn't have to take it out of the child's money, but he could take it out of the child's money. But he cannot pay on behalf of the sane pubescent child without permission. So if you have a pubescent child who's sane, because you already know if he's insane, you're obligated to support him. You have a pubescent child who's sane, then once the child reaches puberty, you, father, you're no longer obligated to support this child, male or female child. That's Shafi'i school. According to the Shafi'i school, you're not obligated to keep your daughter in the house until she gets married, for example. So this sane pubescent child has to pay his own zakat if he has money. If he doesn't have money, then he's not obligated. And you're not obligated because you don't have to support this child. But if you want to, you can pay on behalf of this sane pubescent child as long as you take his permission. Can't just do it. One sister told me that she was paying zakat for her husband. So it's not valid to do that unless he accepts. Like a stranger, meaning this same pubescent child has, in this case of body zakat, the judgment of a stranger. You can't just pay a stranger zakat. If you wanted to, you'd have to ask for his permission. And that's what you have to do for your child or any other person. The grandfather is like the father. And unlike them is the guardian who's authorized by a will or a legal guardian appointed by a judge. So the grandfather is like the father. What does that mean? It means you're pop, yani you're the grandfather, and you have grandchild, has his own money, prepubescent grandchild with his own money. Now, pop, can you pay zakat for this prepubescent grandchild who has his own money? You can. Just like the father. The grandfather's like the father. But unlike them, not like the father and the grandfather, is a guardian who's authorized by a will. Yani he left a will for someone to look after your children. He's a guardian by your will. He's not like the father or the grandfather here. Or a legal guardian appointed by a judge. It's not like the father or grandfather here. They may not pay for their wards without permission from the judge. These guardians, they have to get permission from the judge if they wanted to pay for the child. The mukatab slave is not obligated to pay for his wife. The mukatab slave is not obligated to pay for his wife. I won't go into that now, but unless you have a question. Nor is one obligated to pay for his father's wife. Who's his father's wife? We're not saying his mother. His father's wife here means his stepmother. And what we're saying here is, supposing you are obligated to support your father. Okay, you have to support your father. Then you have to pay zakat al-fitr for being obligated to support a Muslim body. But what about his wife? He can't support his own wife. You're supporting him. Then you need to support his wife too. But she doesn't come under who you're obligated to pay zakat for. She's outside of that circle. So, okay, well, what is that zakat? It doesn't even say here. That zakat is, according to the Shafi'i school, a sa' of the most common staple crop of the town. Sa' means 4 muds. A mud is 2 average sized hands cupped together. So 2 average sized hands cupped together, full of wheat or rice or whatever is the common staple. That's 1 mud. The zakat of bodies is a sa' per body. 1 sa' is 4 muds. 4 muds per body. Wallahu a'lam. Do you have any question there? According to the Shafi'i school, you're going to pay the grain. You're not going to pay money. You're not going to pay a meal. Yes.
I have a question. For the average size hand, is that according to a man, or does it matter if it's can it be also for a woman?
Yeah, that's a man's hand.
Okay. And the other question I
Like the Prophet's hands. His hands were perfect average size.
Okay.
Alayhi salatu
The
wassalam.
other thing is, if you have a child that you paid zakat for, they are pubescent, but they're unable to pay. And you didn't ask, but you paid for them anyway. Do you have to redo that, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's not valid. That's not valid.
Okay.
Have to. So it's not valid. So whenever a person pays invalid zakat, he has to take it back. Now, if he can't, then that's another issue. Yani, he has to do something. Like go to the person and tell him that money that I paid you, that was not valid zakat. Can you give it back to me, for example? And then if he says, no, I've been spent it, then yani,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Barakallahu feek.
I mean, Wafiq. Now we're moving on to new subject. Rewards and prizes. Is there some relevance here? Is it flowing like I was talking about in the beginning of the lesson? Yes, because if we back up here, we're under something broad here. The broad title is giving, relinquishing, spending, and supporting. So giving, that would include a reward or a prize. Relinquishing, that means not keeping, doesn't mean giving though. Not keeping doesn't mean giving. Because you could have a wife and divorce her. That doesn't mean you gave her to somebody else. It means you didn't keep your right over her. Or you might have a slave and you emancipate that slave. Or you might have a slave and you give that slave as a gift. You didn't emancipate. But if you just emancipated, then you relinquished something. And spending and supporting, so all of these have something in common. So that's where we are here. Under giving, relinquishing, spending, and supporting. And we talked about zakat in general. We talked about spousal support. We talked about zakatul fitr also. Now we have a section on rewards and prizes. The author says, whoever offers a known reward for a task must pay who performed it, what was offered. So reward here, what reward means is like what's familiar to you. Don't you see a picture on a pole? It says, whoever finds my cat, this is my cat. There's $100 reward. Or the police would say, we have $50,000 for whoever will snitch. You do this job, we'll pay you a reward. So the reward here, this word reward in this context, it's a payment. It's going to be an obligatory payment actually. So the word is reward, and the meaning here is that this is an obligatory payment because you made it a condition to get this reward that a person would do a particular task. So when he does that task, then now you must pay him whatever was offered. Whoever offers a known reward, so not just you said, if someone finds my cat, then I'll give him a reward. So what's the reward? That's not known. So we're not talking about that. But if you offered a known reward, so whoever finds my cat, whoever builds a fence around my house, whoever paints this wall, etc. Whoever digs ditch here, then he has a reward of $1,000. Whoever offers a known reward for a task must pay who performed it. He has to pay him what was offered. And this who is unspecified. Because of that, this is a risky deal. But this is one of the risky deals that the religion allowed us to engage in. Because you're doing a deal with an unknown person. If the reward is unknown, like you said, whoever does such and such has a reward, and that's it, then whoever fulfills it deserves the market salary. Whatever such a job is worth, whoever came to you having done that, then you have to give him what that work is worth. If you specified the reward, you only have to give him whatever you offered, whether it's worth more or less than the market. If you don't specify the reward, then you have to give him what his work was worth. And it is permissible to give a prize for a contest without gambling. It's permissible to give a prize for a contest without gambling. So here, prize, because reward and prize could mean same, but they don't mean the same here in this context. A prize for a contest. Contest is a game or challenge. Without gambling. How do you avoid gambling? How do you give a prize without gambling? You need to know what gambling is. And gambling is for all contestants to contribute to the prize, and the winner takes all. Gambling is for all contestants to contribute to the prize, and winner takes all. You said, what's the difference between placing bets and gambling? I don't know any difference. So if all the contestants contribute to the prize and the winner takes all, then that's gambling. That's haram. According to the Shafi'i school, absolutely haram. According to the Hanafi school, though, not absolutely haram. According to the Hanafis, there's a way to gamble legally. How's that? According to the Hanafis, if you're in a non-Muslim country dealing with a non-Muslim, the deal here is the gamble. Dealing with a non-Muslim, and you're confident that you will win. Like, for example, you know you'll win. Then, according to them, you can. The Shafi'is say to the Hanafis, the proof that you use for this is abrogated, no longer applicable. It's like the Shafi'is are saying to the Hanafis, y'all on some old stuff. That's abrogated. It's not even applicable anymore. Yeah, there was something like that, no longer is there. And the Hanafis are saying, no, it's still applicable. It's not abrogated. It's not abrogated. The Hanafis are saying it's not abrogated. They're saying rather, when the conditions exist, then you can do it just like they did it then, because the conditions were there. It's not abrogated. Because they were saying, the Hanafis are saying, because they were in Mecca at the time. And Mecca was kafir land at the time. So, and they were dealing with kuffar. So the conditions were there. It's not abrogated. So then, if it's not that all of the contestants are contributing to the prize and the winner takes all, how would it be? You have a few scenarios. One is that the one who puts up the prize is not a contestant. This is not gambling. So he says, here's the money right here. The winner takes it. And he's not a contestant. This is not gambling. That's valid. Or one of the contestants, let's say there's two, He puts up the prize. So he says to his opponent, if you win, you take my money. If I win, I keep my own money. So that's not gambling in the Shafi'i school. And that's the answer of the Shafi'is to another proof that some others might use. When a man who was a famous wrestler challenged the Prophet ﷺ to a wrestling match, and he told him, if you beat me, you can take a third of my flock. So the Prophet ﷺ, he wrestled him and beat him. So he took a third of his flock. The Shafi'is say this is not proof for gambling. That's not even gambling, because only one person put up the prize, and he told his contestant, if you win, you can take it. Then he said to the Prophet again, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he put up another third, and the Prophet beat him again. He took his second third. He told him again, and he put up his last third. And the Prophet beat him again. He took his whole flock, alayhi salatu wassalam, and then he gave it back to him. Sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. So that's another scenario. And the third scenario is that, let's say there's two contestants. If they both want to contribute to the prize, then they have to introduce a third contestant who's formidable. A third formidable contestant who does not contribute to the prize. If he wins, he can take all. Now, whoever wins can take all of it, but that third person can't contribute. And this is not gambling, according to the Shafi'is. Wallahu a'lam. We'll stop there. Then next week, if Allah enables us, we'll talk about safekeeping and borrowing items and whatever else is going to come. Loaning and owing. Insha'Allah ta'ala. Excuse me?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Quick question. With raffling, how is this different from gambling?
The way to escape gambling when doing a raffle is to just donate your money only. Because if it's a donation, that means you're not expecting anything back. You didn't give it to get something back. And then whoever's drawing the ticket or whatever, he's going to give a gift to whoever's name comes out. So this has the appearance of gambling, but it's not gambling because of the intentions. If it were the case that the person who's paying the money is doing so with the hopes, not for free really, meaning it's a gamble here, he might lose but he might win and he hopes to win, then that's a gamble. Not from the side of the giver, from the side of the payer, it's a gamble. That's correct. Yeah. Ameen Wafiq. You said the last example. So the last example is that two contestants, for example, both want to contribute to the prize. But that's haram if winner takes all, unless they introduce a third player. And this third player has to be formidable. That means he knows how to play. And he could even win. And if he wins, he takes all, but he can't contribute to the prize. Then this is not gambling, according to the Shafi'is. Now, if somebody wants to, let's say, bring a dictionary definition of gambling and say, no, it's gambling. Look, this is what gambling means. So if it might be said that that's gambling, then If somebody wants to insist that that's gambling, even though this third player doesn't have to pay, and he can take it all if he wins. If someone wants to insist that that's gambling, then we're going to say it's not a forbidden one then. If that is gambling, then it's not a forbidden one. But I'm going to say it's not gambling. And what I mean by gambling is something that's haram. Any other question? You're welcome.